Hey everybody, it's Chris, and we're going to look at the Warlock subclasses. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing a ranking of all the Warlock subclasses that are officially in the game. So the 4 new ones in the 2024 Player's Handbook, along with all the ones from previous sources like Xanathar's Guide to Everything and Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft and Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be looking at 4 levels in particular, levels 3, 6, 10, and 14, which are the levels where Warlocks get subclass features. And I'm going to give each level for each subclass a rating from 1 to 5 stars, and then I'm going to rank them. And then what I'll do is as we move to the next level, so like once we go from level 3 to level 6, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add together the ratings from level 3 and level 6 to get a total rating, and so on, all the way up to level 14. And if you've watched my videos on the Warlock subclasses, you'll see that I have already rated all their features from 1 to 5 stars, so I am just going to be repeating those, and so I'm going to go through those really quickly. I'm going to spend a lot more time on the older subclasses to see how they compare. Now, Warlocks are kind of an unique case, I guess I would say, because there's no other class I can think of, at least at the moment, that the subclasses themselves got such a boost in 2024, simply because the structure of how the subclasses were made included the old version had expanded spell lists where Warlocks got a bunch of spells that they could choose as part of their Warlock spells. But the new versions now have those all automatically prepared. And that is a huge advantage. That is a huge advantage. Imagine for a moment that we have the Genie patron subclass. Well, they have an option on their expanded spell list at 9th level for the Wish spell. Wish is maybe the most powerful spell in the game. It is certainly, arguably, the most powerful spell in the game. So that would seem to be a huge benefit for them. However, Warlocks already have some really good 9th level spells. Probably the standout on their list is True Polymorph. So we're not getting Wish. What we're doing is we're getting the opportunity to get rid of True Polymorph and replace it with Wish, which is okay. Like it's probably a step up, but it's not a massive step up. But imagine for a moment that with your Mystic Arcanum, you had the ability with your 9th level Mystic Arcanum to choose either Wish or True Polymorph. That would be fantastic. And the Genie Patron does not have that option. But with the new subclasses, basically, all those spells that would normally be part of their expanded spell list are all automatically prepared. And they are all, or for the most part, spells that Warlocks normally can't get as well. So this gives the 2024 subclasses a massive advantage over the older subclasses. And I can't ignore that. So it did affect my star ratings. As I rated the 2024 subclasses, I took a look at the older subclasses to determine whether to rate things. If I'm going to rate something as average, it has to be average all the way down the list. So when I looked at the older subclasses, I had to take that into account. That expanded spells is just not as good as just getting free spells. So this means that there's a bigger hill to climb for the older subclasses with Warlocks in particular. And this will affect the ratings. So just be aware of that as we go in. There will be occasional ties, and the way I deal with ties is I basically rank them in the order they were presented. However, once we get above 3rd level, I will take the previous level into account. So if, one subclass was better at 3rd level, but then at 6th level they're worse and it ends up being even, I will do the one that did better at 3rd level and rank it higher. It wins the tie because I would say that subclass is better to play throughout the levels than the other one it tied with. That has only become up to snuff at that higher level. And there is a lot to go through, so I'm not going to waste any more time talking about it. We're just going to go into it. I will mention that as I go through the player's handbook ones, I am not going to justify the scores. I'm not going to really talk about the abilities. I already did videos on that. So if you're wondering why something scored something the way it did, check out the video. The other thing I will mention before we get started is I was asked if I would take a look at how a house rule might affect the ratings. So if, for example, we had a house rule where we said that all the old subclasses get all of their expanded spell lists as automatic preparations, which I think is a fairly obvious house rule. Would that affect the ratings? Of course it would. It would have a massive impact on the ratings. So I think I should take a look at that, but this would be too long a video to do it in this video. So there will be a follow-up video where we look at how incorporating that house rule would change the ratings of those older subclasses. But yeah, we're now going to get into it. We're going to start with the Archfey Patron. We're at level 3 right now. So Archfey Patron gets Archfey spells, gets Steps of the Fey, and I gave it 5 stars. And what that is going to do is it's going to obviously put them in first place because first one presented and maximum possible score. And that is going to take us to the Celestial Patron. And the Celestial Patron is going to get the Celestial spells and Healing Light, and I gave that 4 stars, and that will be enough for them to get 3rd place overall. Then we have the Fiend Patron. They're going to get Dark One's Blessing and Fiend spells, and that gets 5 stars, and that is going to put them in 2nd place overall. Then we are going to have the Great Old One Patron, and they're going to get Awakened Mind and Great Old One spells and Psychic spells, and that gets 4 stars. And so they are going to end up in 4th place. And based on my introduction, you should understand why I considered all of their level 3 features above average features. Which means that of the remaining subclasses, we basically have from 5 through 9 to fill in. So we have below average stuff and we have average stuff. So we're not going to see a lot of 5-star. We're not going to see any 5 stars, and we're not going to see a lot of 4 stars. But we're going to get started with the Fathomless Warlock. So they are going to get an expanded spell list with Create or Destroy Water, Thunder Wave, Gust of Wind, and Silence. These aren't terrible spells, but I struggle to think which Warlock spells I'm going to give up to take these and feel like I gained anything. Then there's Tentacle of the Deeps, and this allows us to create a Spectral Tentacle number of times equal to our proficiency bonus per long rest. We can attack with it using our bonus action. Doesn't do very good damage, does a d8 damage, and it's cold damage, which isn't super reliable. It also slows the enemy by 10 feet. I don't know. I mean, slow is a weapon mastery now. It's very cheap, right? It's a cheap thing to be adding. But it's okay, right? If you don't have anything else to do with your bonus action, you can add a little bit of damage and slow down your enemy a little bit. And then we're going to get Gift of the Sea. You gain a swimming speed of 40 feet, and you can breathe underwater. And if you are in a campaign where this is a high star feature, then that is totally valid, but you know what campaign that is. Most campaigns, swimming speeds don't come up, rarely, if at all, and the same thing about breathing underwater. So, I mean, when I put these together, it's a 2-star feature. It is definitely below average. When we look at the Warlocks that are available and their level 3 features, maybe there was a time this was a 3-star feature back when we had the old version of the Archfey Warlock, for example. But it's not anymore. It is definitely below average now. And that is going to put Fathomless in 7th place overall. So then let's go to the Genie. Now the Genie, I think, was generally considered the most powerful subclass before the new Player's Handbook came out. So the expanded spell list is a little more complicated because when you choose the Genie patron, you have to choose which kind of Genie that your patron is. So it could be a Dao, a Jinn, a Nefriti, or a Merid. And what expanded spells you get will depend on which Genie you selected. And it's not an equal list. All of them are going to get Detect Evil and Good and Phantasmal Force. Detect Evil and Good I probably wouldn't bother with. Phantasmal Force I might. with the Dow, we have Sanctuary and Spike Growth. I don't know if I'd take Sanctuary with packed spells. I think Sanctuary is really nice if you're playing a character that uses regular spell slots. Spike Growth, I think at level 3, it's pretty good. But do I want to expand 5th level pack slots to cast a 2nd level spell that doesn't benefit from upcasting? I don't know. I mean, Spike Growth is a very good spell, so maybe a 3rd level slot, but it's, again, not quite as attractive as if, we were playing a character that had 2nd level spell slots. Now, I will mention that maybe we multiclass, and then this ends up being a little better, right? Like if we multiclass out of Warlock at level 3, then we have 2 2nd level pack slots. They're perfect for Spike Growth. So there are cases where it's better. Thunder Wave and Gust of Wind for Jhin. Yeah, I probably wouldn't bother. Freedy with Burning Hands and Scorching Ray. Again, I don't know if I'd bother. Merid with Fog Cloud and Blur. I mean, Blur. Warlocks look for defensive spells, so Blur maybe at level 3. Once again, there's no upcast there, right? And that's very important for Warlocks. And then we get the Genie's Vessel. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have the ability to go into the vessel and, spend some time there. At first, it's not that long. It's about 4 hours maximum, so you can't do a long rest in there. But you could do a short rest in there. Can't bring the rest of your party, though. So there are certain niche cases for how this could be used. People have gone into detail for tech you might be able to do with Bottled Respite. I've done to some extent myself, if you look at my old Genie videos. But in general, I don't see this coming up very much, other than as potentially a place to store a bunch of stuff, right? Like you could get this huge amount of treasure and you have no way of carrying it out of the place. Well, you could potentially, given time, get it all into your Bottled Respite and carry it along that way. But in general, I don't think it's mostly, I think, a ribbon feature. Then we get Genie's Wrath, and this is the bigger feature here. It says, once during each of your turns, when you hit with an attack roll, you deal extra damage to your target equal to your proficiency bonus. Type of damage is determined by your patron, and the list here is, again, not even. Bludgeoning through Dow is pretty reliable, but if I'm doing fire through the Freedy, well, there's a fair number of creatures resistant or immune to that. So once again, it depends what patron you choose. One way or the other, we're talking about right now 2 points of damage, potentially once on your turn. So it's not a whole lot to begin with, but it does scale. Your proficiency bonus goes up, and as we make more attacks, the chance that we will be able to inflict it goes up as well. So it's not bad, but when I look at the other Warlock subclasses, certainly at level 3, it's not impressing all that much. And I don't even think at higher levels it's impressing all that much because, I mean, we're going to be getting into Hexblade where we can add the damage over and over again. So as our attacks go up, the damage is increasing exponentially, and it's not here. And what else? The vessel can be destroyed, and if it is destroyed, you can get it back. And it's 2 stars. I mean, again, this is probably a 3-star feature a year ago, but it's not a year ago. And this is going to put the Genie at 8th rank at level 3. And yes, that seems very low for Genie Pact. Don't worry, they won't stay at 8th. And then we're going to move on to the Hexblade. And if the Genie was considered the best after it was released, the Hexblade was definitely considered the best after it was released. And I think in modern years, there's been a realization that it might not be the best anymore. Certainly, if you're going to continue with Warlock, it's maybe not the best, but it sure gives you a lot at level 3. We get an expanded spell list of Shield, Wrathful Smite, Blur, and Branding Smite. And Branding Smite was always considered the terrible option. I'll note that there's no Branding Smite anymore, but presumably this is replaced with Shining Smite. Talk to your DM just to be sure, but Shining Smite is, I think, the upgrade to Branding Smite, and it's a lot better. And it upcasts, which makes it better with pack slots. Wrathful Smite is decent, also upcasts. I'll also point out that Wrathful Smite and Branding Smite can be combined with an Eldritch Smite, so if you want to throw all your magic into a single attack, you can. But again, you would have to select these, which means you're not selecting Warlock spells. Shield, of course, is the obvious standout here, but Shield doesn't upcast. So when we have second or third or fourth or fifth level pack slots, I'm not sure Shield is a good 5th level spell. So with Hexblade, I'd definitely be looking at multi-classing to get a couple first level slots. Like you could take a 1 level dip in another class and Shield becomes a lot better. Of course, if you dip the obvious class, which is Sorcerer, you'd get Shield anyways. So it really depends on how you multi-class your Hexblade, how good that Shield is. Then we're going to get Hexblade's Curse. This is probably the best thing they get. Probably. There's another pretty good one. But they get the ability as a bonus action to curse a creature. And then when they attack that creature, they crit on a 19 or 20. And if they hit, they do additional damage equal to their proficiency bonus. And I should mention, it doesn't even need to be an attack. It can be any kind of damage that you do to a creature. You add your proficiency bonus to the damage. And if the target dies, you regain hit points equal to your Warlock level plus your Charisma modifier. Now, I will point out that's once per short rest, which means the amount you would regain from taking down your cursed target is the amount that a Fiend Patron Warlock gets in temporary hit points with every enemy they take down, as well as every enemy that's taken down near them. So it's not even close in terms of that. But if we're focusing on offense, the extra damage stacks nicely because as we get additional damage, it increases. And the attack rolls, of course, if we're going for any kind of crit fishing, if we are sitting on smites, then they become very nice as well. So the big, downside to Hexblade Curse is how limited it is. You got to be within 30 feet. You choose one creature, and once that creature is down, it's gone until you take a short rest. That's the big downside of Hexblade Curse. And then we have Hex Warrior, and half of Hex Warrior is mostly obsolete at this point, but the other half is good. So at 3rd level, you acquire the training necessary to effectively arm yourself for battle. You gain proficiency with medium armor, shields, and martial weapons. This was super nice as a dip because it gave you the medium armor and shields at level 1. So you could dip Hexblade and get that proficiency in addition to the other stuff. It is, of course, no longer a dip. You got to invest 3 levels in Warlock now to get this feature. But if you're going straight Warlock, it means that you don't have to dip some other class to get these proficiencies, though you do not get it at level 1 and 2. So if you want to be more resilient in level 1 or 2, you might want to dip anyways, in which case then this doesn't matter. But this is still the best part of Hex Warrior now, because the other part is mostly irrelevant. It says whenever you finish a long rest, you can touch one weapon that you're proficient with and lacks the two-handed property. When you attack with that weapon, you can use your Charisma modifier instead of Strength or Dexterity for the attack and damage rolls. But if you are a Warlock and you're planning to use a weapon, then you probably took Pact of the Blade, and you're going to be using your Charisma. And I guess this would allow you to, use your Charisma with a second weapon, but with Pact of the Blade, it's just a bonus action to switch it out, so it probably isn't necessary even for that. So that part is mostly irrelevant now. It's mostly just the armor and shield, which is still something, and Hexblade Curse, which is still something, and the expanded spells is small. Small benefit because, again, you're giving up other spells to get those spells. But it's still worth 4 stars. It's above average, even with having expanded spells instead of, regular spells. And, yeah, that's going to end up in 5th place, but I'll note that they are tied with Celestial at 3rd place. So 3rd, 4th, and 5th are all tied together. And then we'll look at the Undead Warlock. So I should specify there's 2 Warlocks that are basically the same in terms of thematics. That is the Undead Warlock and the Undying Warlock. In either case, they're going to have a patron that's like a Lich or something like that. With the Undead patron, we're going to use the subclass that was in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. And with the Undying, we're going to use the subclass that was in the Sword Coast Adventures Guide. We'll first look at the Undead. So we get an expanded spell list: Bane, False Life, Blindness, Deafness, Phantasmal Force. I maybe take some of these, but I don't think that's a big advantage to me. And then Form of Dread. You manifest an aspect of your patron's dreadful power. As a bonus action, you transform for 1 minute. You gain the following benefits while transformed. And this is proficiency bonus times per long rest. You gain temporary hit points equal to a d10 plus your Warlock level. And once during each of your turns, when you hit a creature with an attack roll, you can force it to make a wisdom saving throw. And if the saving throw fails, the target is frightened of you until the end of your next turn. And you are immune to the frightened condition, which is nice. And that's basically it. And the temporary hit points is nice, but again, all compared to the Fiend Patron, right? Not even close. The once during each of your turns, you can potentially frighten a creature is decent. Frightened isn't huge, right? It's not the huge condition to cause. There's also a number of creatures that are immune to frightened, so it's not super reliable. The immunity to the frightened condition is nice. Like, condition immunities are very nice to have. And so, we have a bunch of stuff here that's okay, and we put it all together, and I do think it is worth 3 stars. It is an average feature as far as Warlocks go, and that is going to put them in 6th place. And they are currently tied with no one, and they're currently the only 3-star feature at level 3, and it is going to be the only 3-star feature at level 3. Then we move on to the Undying. Like I said, thematically very similar to the Undead, but mechanically very, very different from the Undead. And when I did my monk ratings, I was looking at the Sun Soul Monk, which was from the Sword Coast Adventures Guide, and I'd almost forgotten how bad it was until I went into it again, and I'm like, wow, this is just terrible. It is going to be tough for any subclass to score as poorly as the Sun Soul Monk. And then I looked at the Undying Warlock from the same book, and I had forgotten how terrible it is too. So, expanded spell list, False Life, Ray of Sickness, Blindness, Deafness, Silence, it's the same as the Undead. And then Among the Dead. Starting at 3rd level, you learn the Spare the Dying cantrip. So we get a cantrip, which counts as a Warlock cantrip for us. We also have advantage on saving throws against any disease. This is now obsolete. We don't have saving throws versus disease anymore. Those have been removed from the game. So obsolete feature was never great, but it's now obsolete. Additionally, undead have difficulty harming you. If an undead targets you directly with an attack or a harmful spell, that creature must make a wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC. And an undead needn't make the save when it includes you in an area of effect, such as the explosion of a fireball. So only like attacking directly you. On a failed save, the creature must choose a new target or forfeit targeting someone instead of you, potentially wasting the attack or spell. And I was rereading this, and I looked at that and thought, it's obviously circumstantial because it is only against undead, but, it's not that bad. And then I look at further on, and it says, on a successful save, the creature is immune to this effect for 24 hours. Okay, that's not good. An undead is also immune to this effect for 24 hours if you target it with an attack or a harmful spell. So if you want to stay out of a fight, then the undead will have difficulty attacking you once. And then for the rest of the time, no problem. So it's kind of like a sanctuary spell, except it's only good against undead, and they only have to save once against it. And sanctuary is a 1st level spell. And this is the best feature that the Undying Warlock gets. The best. So I'm giving it 2 stars. And if we look at the ratings, they're in 9th place, and they should get used to being in 9th place. But technically speaking, at this level, they are tied with Fathomless and Genie, and I kind of feel bad about that, because Genie and Fathomless are better at level 3. Although I gave them the same stars, I maybe should have given Undying 1 star here, because it is a worse feature. But what I wanted to do was, looking at the Undying, I wanted to make sure at least their best feature got a better score than their worst features. This is a better feature than their worst features, so I gave them 2, but it could have been 1. All right, so they get an honorary or a dishonorary 1 star here, but I gave them 2. Okay, so that is level 3. And this is the ranking, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of power for each of these subclasses at level 3. Archfey, Fiend, Celestial, Great Old One, Hexblade, Undead, Fathomless, Genie, and Undying. And now we're going to look at level 6. And the Archfey patron gets Misty Escape and Archfey spells, and I gave that 4 stars. Again, if you want to know why, watch that video. And that is going to land them in 2nd place at level 6. And then we're going to move on to the Celestial patron. And they get Radiant Soul and Celestial spells, which I gave 3 stars to. And that is going to keep them in 3rd place. And then we're going to go on to the Fiend patron. And they get Dark One's Own Luck and Fiend spells, which I gave 5 stars to. That means 2 5-star features in a row. So obviously they're now in 1st place. And then we have the Great Old One patron. And they are going to get Clairvoyant, Combatant, and Great Old One spells, which I only gave 2 stars to. And that is still enough for them to maintain 4th place. But is no longer a tie. So Celestial and Great Old One were tied. They aren't anymore. So let's move on to the Fathomless Warlock. So at level 6, they're going to get Oceanic Soul. You are now even more at home in the depths. You gain resistance to cold damage. That's okay. In addition, when you're fully submerged, any creature that is also fully submerged can understand your speech and you can understand theirs. This is obviously a ribbon, right? And then Guardian Coil. Your Tentacle of the Deeps defends you and others, interposing itself between them and harm. When you or a creature you can see takes damage while within 10 feet of the tentacle, you can use your reaction to choose one of those creatures and reduce the damage of that creature by a d8. When you reach 10th level in this class, the damage reduced by the tentacle increases to 2d8. And then we're going to get the expanded spell list of Lightning Bolt and Sleet Storm. All right, so Oceanic Soul is okay, mainly because of the cold resistance. Guardian Coil is pretty good. I mean, the advantage there is, although it doesn't sound like a lot, like it's a d8 and you're using your reaction and it's against 1 attack. So as far as reaction defenses go, this is not great, right? I'd take Defensive Duelist in a heartbeat over this as a reaction defense. But this gives you a pretty reliable reaction every single round. Once your tentacle is out, you don't have to spend any additional resources. You're just spending your reaction over and over and over again. And essentially, you're reducing the damage to your party by a d8 each round. And that's okay. Yeah, it's not bad. And I've played with Guardian Coil a number of times, and it's not super impactful, but it makes a difference. And the expanded spell list of Lightning Bolt and Sleet Storm. Lightning Bolt is okay, and Sleet Storm is okay. I might choose either or both of these spells. I know there are some people who are really into Sleet Storm. I'm not as big into it as they are. I mean, it has its uses, but I have seen so many times Sleet Storm get cast and it really doesn't help. Just maybe too many times for me, and it's kind of soured me on it. So I don't think that's a big benefit for them. But based on what I've got here, I think this is 3 stars, middle of the road. And so that is going to keep them in 8th place. They're going to have 5 stars overall. And then we're going to go on to the Genie. So they get Elemental Gift. You begin to take on the characteristics of your patron's kind. You now have resistance to a damage type determined by your patron's kind. And yeah, these are all okay. I think Thunder comes up the least. Bludgeoning probably comes up the most. But yeah, it's a resistance. In addition, as a bonus action, you can give yourself a flying speed of 30 feet that lasts for 10 minutes, for which you can hover. You can use this bonus action a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. This is excellent. Not a lot of subclasses are going to give you flight at level 6, and this one is multiple times, and it lasts for 10 minutes, and it has hover. So, I mean, this is a solid feature. And then we get expanded spells. Everybody's going to get Create Food and Water, which I don't think anyone would take. Dow get Meld into Stone, which is okay. Genie get Wind Wall, which is okay. Afridi get Fireball, pretty good. Merid get Sleet Storm, which is okay. I might take any of those. I'd probably take Fireball for sure. But the other 3, probably not Wind Wall. But Meld into Stone or Sleet Storm I might take. And I think level 6 for Genie is 4 stars, above average. And that gives them 6th place overall. So that has moved them up a spot. And now we're going to go to the Hexblade. And they get a Cursed Spectre. Starting at 6th level, you can curse the soul of a person you slay, temporarily binding it to your service. When you slay a humanoid, you can cause its spirit to rise from its corpse as a spectre. The statistics for which are in the monster manual. And the spectre is a pretty weak undead, but it's definitely better than a zombie or a skeleton. When the spectre appears, it gains temporary hit points equal to half your warlock level. Roll initiative for the spectre, which has its own turns. It obeys your verbal commands, and it gains a special bonus to its attack rolls equal to your charisma modifier, minimum of +0. The spectre remains in your service until the end of your next long rest, at which point it vanishes into the afterlife. Once you bind a spectre with this feature, you can't use the feature again until you finish a long rest. And you get the expanded spell list of Blink and Elemental Weapon. I'm not sure I would take Blink or Elemental Weapon, but a Cursed Spectre is actually pretty good. Like the Spectre in combat, it's not that great for combat, and if you take it into combat, it probably die pretty quick. But it also has uses outside of combat because it is insubstantial, and that actually, like, it can go through walls and come back and tell you what was on the other side, and those kinds of utility things that it can do are kind of cool. So it's still a pretty good thing to have. The problem is you don't just get it every day. You have to slay a humanoid to get it every day. And maybe you're in a campaign where that's not a problem, but in a lot of campaigns, that's a huge problem. And I have played a Hexblade where I never got to use this, even though I played the Hexblade into the higher levels. So I cannot give this a high score based on the difficulty of use. So 2 stars it gets. And it maintains 5th place. But if we look here, we'll see the score is actually now tied with the Genie. And so now we're going to go to the Undead. And they get Grave Touched. Your patron's powers have a profound effect on your body and magic. You don't need to eat, drink, or breathe. Don't really care. Not breathing sometimes has a mechanical impact, but this is very much a ribbon. In addition, once during each of your turns, when you hit a creature with an attack roll and roll damage against the creature, you can replace the type with necrotic damage. Now, this obviously depends a lot on what you're attacking with, but most attack rolls will have, maybe you're using Eldritch Blast or you're using a weapon. Chances are it's going to be more reliable than necrotic damage. And if you are using a weapon, you almost certainly have Pact of the Blade, which gives you necrotic as an option anyways, along with other more reliable options. So that's not a benefit really at all. There are probably cases like maybe if you're attacking with poison spray, being able to switch it to necrotic would be a good thing. But I'd say in most cases, turning it to necrotic is probably not a good thing. Because, your Eldritch Blast does force damage. Force damage is way more reliable than necrotic. While you're using your Form of Dread, you can roll 1 additional damage die when determining the necrotic damage the target takes. So, if we choose to do the necrotic damage, we can do additional damage. So as long as they're not resistant or immune to necrotic damage, then we can do more damage with this. And a fair number of times. So that's pretty decent. And of course, it depends what the damage die is, right? If it's a D4, this is no big deal. But, Eldritch Blast is probably the most obvious. It would give you an extra D10. That's pretty good. That's better than adding your proficiency bonus. And then if we look at, maybe some kind of D12, like let's say we did the poison spray and turned it to necrotic. Well, that does D12s. An additional D12 would be very nice. We could also do Agonizing Blast, or maybe there's some kind of build with Poison Spray and Warlocks with the Undead. I don't know. I'd have to look at it. I am skeptical. But nevertheless, expanded spell list, Phantom Steed, I'm taking that with a Warlock. And Speak with Dead, which I probably am not taking. Overall, 2 stars. It's still below average, because if you didn't have to switch your damage type to necrotic, this would be 3 stars. But this lands them in 7th place with 5 stars total over the 2 different levels. And the Undying. Starting at 6th level, you can give yourself Vitality when you cheat death or when you help someone else cheat it. You regain hit points equal to a D8 plus your Constitution modifier, minimum 1 point, when you succeed on a death saving throw or when you stabilize a creature with Spare the Dying. And over again, as I was re-reviewing this subclass, because I had forgotten most of it, I would read the first part of a feature and go, oh, you know what? That's not as bad as I remember. And then I'd get to the end of the feature. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. This is not a once per long rest feature. Are you kidding me? 1d8 plus your constitution modifier? That is not a lot of hit points. That is going to be less than a Cure Wounds spell. Now, you have to succeed on a death saving throw or stabilize a creature with Spare the Dying. I guess it's good the one time you use Spare the Dying to stabilize a creature and now they're, conscious again. But once per long rest, this should not be once per long rest. And then the expanded spell list, Fiend Death, Speak with Dead. I'm probably not taking either of those anyways. This is 1 star. And Undying is going to be in the Hall of Shame by the end of this. But basically, at the end of 6th level, they have a total of 3 stars. And then we jump up to 5 stars for Undead and Fathomless, and 6 stars for Great Old One, Hexblade, and Genie. So those all are basically average. Those are your average subclasses, 3 stars per level. And then Fiend, Archfey, and Celestial are your above average subclasses at 6th level, Fiend being the best. Now let's look at level 10. So back up to Archfey, and we get Beguiling Defenses and Archfey spells. And just to note here, with Archfey spells, I have level 7 and 9, so we have a total of 4 additional known spells here, because I took everything after level 6 before level 10, and that's 4 spells, so it's quite a bit. So they end up with 3 stars at level 10, and that is going to keep them in 2nd place. And then we're going to go on to the Celestial Patron, and they get Celestial Resilience and Celestial Spells, which I gave 3 stars to, and that is going to land them in 4th place. And if you remember, they were in 3rd place before, so they've been bumped down a spot. Then we're going to go on to the Fiend Patron. And we had Fiendish Resilience and Fiend Spells, which I gave 3 stars to, and they maintain their position in 1st place. And then we go to the Great Old One Patron, and they get Eldritch Hex, and they get Thought Shield, and they get Great Old One Spells all together. I gave that 5 stars. And so they are going to jump ahead of Celestial at 10th level, to be the 3rd place subclass, and quite a bit closer. We'll take a look at that at the end. So now we're on to Fathomless, and we at level 10, we have Grasping Tentacles. You learn the spell Evert's Black Tentacles. It counts as a Warlock spell for you, but it doesn't count against the number of spells you know. You can also cast it once without a spell slot, and you regain the ability to do so when you finish a long rest. Whenever you cast this spell, your patron's magic bolsters you, granting you a number of temporary hit points equal to your Warlock level. Moreover, damage can't break your concentration on this spell. An expanded spell list, Control Water, Summon Elemental, Bigby's Hand, Cone of Cold. I'll start with the expanded spell list. Control Water, you know the campaign where you might want that. Most campaigns you don't. Summon Elemental, I don't know if I'd bother. Cone of Cold, I don't know if I'd bother. Take Synaptic Static instead. I think you'll be better served. Bigby's Hand, maybe. I might take Bigby's Hand, though Bigby's Hand benefits a lot from upcasting, and you won't be able to upcast it. So what about Grasping Tentacles? Grasping Tentacles is a decent feature. Evert's Black Tentacles is a 4th level spell. We're 10th level, so we're casting 5th level spells already. So that's not such a big deal. But Evert's Black Tentacles is a solid 4th level spell. I'd definitely put it in the upper half, above average, for 4th level spells. It's not the best 4th level spell, but it's good. And we can cast it once for free. So that's basically like a free 4th level spell slot once per long rest, but only to be cast with Evert's Black Tentacles. That's okay. If I'm going to cast it with pack slots beyond that, I end up using a 5th level slot. And that's not great because Evert's Black Tentacles does not benefit from upcasting. So there's no casting it with a higher level spell slot part at the bottom. So you basically give up that extra level on that spell slot, which isn't ideal. But we'll definitely cast this once, 100%. When we do, we get a number of temporary hit points equal to our Warlock level. That's not a huge amount. Like, that is less than the Fiend Patron gets every single time. Same example I've been giving over and over again. And moreover, damage can't break your concentration on this spell. That's okay. But keep in mind that does not mean you can't lose concentration on this spell. Yes, you don't lose concentration from damage, but at higher levels, you're facing a lot more things that might incapacitate you or stun you or paralyze you. All those things, you lose concentration automatically, and this does not protect you from any of those things. So it's not unbreakable concentration. Just keep that in mind. Still, I mean, Ever's Black Tentacles is far from irrelevant at 10th level. I think this is 3 stars. It's middle of the road at this level. It might have been 4 stars at one time, but it's not anymore thanks to the expanded spell list. And so that gives it 8th spot overall. It doesn't change positions. And now we're on to the Genie, who gets Sanctuary Vessel. And I'm not going to read the whole thing. Basically, you can bring the rest of your party into your vessel with you. And you have a high enough proficiency bonus at this point that you can take a long rest in there. Now remember, your Sanctuary Vessel has an armor class. It can be destroyed. So it's not necessarily a safe long rest. But another thing you get here is if you take a short rest, you can do it in 10 minutes. And that's nice, right? A faster short rest. So, maybe somebody's concentrating on a summon spell or something like that lasts an hour, but you want to take a short rest. You can take a short rest and their duration hasn't expired, which is nice. So that's pretty decent. Then we have the expanded spell lists. Phantasmal Killer, no. Creation, not unless I'm doing some kind of tech with it. Stone Shape, maybe. Wall of Stone, probably. Greater Invisibility. At this level, so many things have True Sight and Blind Sight. It's not that good. Seeming, Fire Shield, maybe. Flame Strike, Control, Water Conical. Most of this isn't stuff I would consider taking. Wall of Stone, I think it's the standout. But this is 2 stars. I mean, the taking your allies into the Bottled Respite and the 10 short rest is decent, but it's like once per day. So, yeah, 2 stars is going to keep it in 7th position. Wasn't it? No, it was higher. It's actually dropped to 7th position. And, yeah, it's actually at below average right now, which is kind of surprising for the Genie patron. But as I look at these again, in context of the new subclasses that are there, things that were above average before are below average now. Okay, so Hexblade and level 10. And they get Armor of Hexes. At 10th level, your Hex grows more powerful. If the target cursed by your Hexblade's curse hits you with an attack roll, you can use your reaction to roll a d6. On a 4 or higher, the attack instead misses you regardless of its roll. So 50-50, right? And then we're going to get Expanded Spell List, Phantasmal Killer, nope. Staggering Smite, probably not. Banishing Smite, probably not. I maybe Banishing Smite, because I'm using pack slots anyway. I know. Cone of Cold, probably not. How good is Armor of Hexes? Well, if we think about the Fathomless patron and blocking with the tentacle with our reaction that reduces damage by a d8, or at this level 2d8, this gives the chance of an all-out miss, even a 50% miss on a critical hit, which is pretty good, but only against the creature that you have hexed with your Hexblade's curse. So it is probably the biggest, toughest enemy in the biggest, toughest fight. So that's something. Obviously, it's not as good as if you had a whole bunch of slots to cast Shield, but Shield, you probably don't have a whole lot of slots to cast unless you're multiclassed. So, and you don't want to be spending 5th level pack slots on the Shield spell. This gives you a reaction defense you can use over and over and over, and I think that's okay. And I think it is worth 2 stars. It's still below average. And that keeps them in 6th place. Yeah, they were in 5th before, so they have also dropped a spot. And we're now on to the Undead, which you could probably figure out has leapfrogged over Genie and Hexblade to get to 5th place. So let's see why. Necrotic Husk. Your connection to undeath and necrotic energy now saturates your body. You have resistance to necrotic damage. That's okay. If you are transformed using a form of dread, you instead become immune to necrotic damage. Now that is special. Immunity to damage types is extremely rare now in this game. Very, very few things have immunity to a damage type, and it's very difficult to achieve with spells as well. There are spells that do it, but not low-level spells. So getting just immunity to necrotic damage, and with the Undead Patron, you could pretty much do this every combat at this point, because we're talking about 5 times for a minute each. So yeah, this is really good. Like, you can do necrotic spells right at your own feet, area of effect spells, and ignore them. Very, very good. In addition, when you would be reduced to 0 hit points, you can use your reaction to drop to 1 hit point instead, and cause your body to erupt with deathly energy. Each creature of your choice that's within 30 feet of you takes necrotic damage equal to 2d10 plus your Warlock level. That's okay. No saving throw. You then gain 1 level of exhaustion. That sucks. Once you use this reaction, you can't do so again until you finish 1d4 long rests. I don't even know why they bothered with the additional penalty here, because if you gain 1 level of exhaustion, this already has a pretty severe limitation built right in, so they probably didn't need the additional thing. The big thing for me here is immunity to necrotic damage. That's the one that really jumps out. Expanded spell list, Death Ward, Greater Invisibility, Anti-Life Shell, Cloud Kill. I might do Anti-Life Shell. It's a pretty good spell. 4 stars. It is above average. And that will jump them to 5th position overall. And by the way, they're now right in the middle. And if you look at their score, it's exactly average. Now, Undying, which is not average. They get Undying Nature. Beginning at 10th level, you can hold your breath indefinitely, and you don't require food, water, or sleep. And the food, water, and breathing, remember, Undead got this at level 6, and we basically ignored it because it was a ribbon. And here, we also don't need sleep, although you still require rest to reduce exhaustion and still benefit from finishing short and long rests. So no benefit in shorter long rests or anything like that. You still have to take just as long to take a long rest. You're not sleeping during it. In addition, you age at a slower rate. For every 10 years that pass, your body ages only 1 year, and you are immune to being magically aged. Obviously, we would love this in real life, but in a role-playing game, this is pointless. I have been role-playing now for over 40 years, and I have yet to have a single character die from old age. So it's not going to come up. And your expanded spell list, Aura of Life, Death Ward, Contagion, Legend Lore, no. This is a ribbon. We get a feature that's a ribbon and nothing else. That's 1 star. And yeah, they end up in 9th position and 4 stars overall. That is so sad. 4 stars over 3 different waypoints. And if we look 1 position above them at Fathomless, we jump all the way up to 8, which is just under average. But so Undying is just terrible. Terrible. On the upside, Undying existing allowed me to give more stars to everything else because they pulled the average down. But yeah, Fathomless, Genie, and Hexblade are all at 8 stars total at this point. Undead is at 9, which is right in the middle of the chart. And basically, 3 plus 3 plus 3 is 9. And then we go to 10 with Celestial, 11 with the Great Old One, 12 with Archfey, 13 with Fiend. So a pretty straight progression from Hexblade, Genie, and Fathomless at 8, then 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Let's look at our final level, level 14. And so I had to make the writing a little smaller here just so I can fit the charts on the screen, because the charts get bigger, of course, with more levels involved. But anyway, we're back up to Archfey. Bewitching Magic, I gave 3 stars to, and they will finish up in 2nd place. So they've been 2nd place ever since 6th level. At 3rd level, they were actually in 1st place. Then we move on to the Celestial Patron, and they get Searing Vengeance, which I gave 3 stars to. And the Celestial Patron will end up in 4th place. So of the player's handbook subclasses, it ends up in last place. Then we'll look at the Fiend Patron. I gave Hurl Through Hell 2 stars, and they hold 1st place. So with a total of 15, they will be in 1st place, though if we look at the actual totals, there are ties. So we'll move on. We'll talk more about that at the end. On to the Great Old One Patron. They get Create Thrall, which I gave 4 stars to, and that is going to land them in 3rd position at level 14. And now let's talk about the older subclasses. So let's start with Fathomless. They get Fathomless Plunge. You can magically open temporary conduits to watery destinations. As an action, you can teleport yourself and up to 5 other willing creatures that you can see within 30 feet of you. Amid a whirl of tentacles, you all vanish, then reappear up to 1 mile away in a body of water you've seen, pond size or larger, or within 30 feet of it, each of you appearing in an unoccupied space within 30 feet of the others. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. You know what the problem with this feature is that I didn't pick up on until I saw it in a game? Is I originally thought this is a good escape feature because, you've got a 30-foot distance. That's more than a teleport spell. And 1 mile away is plenty far away to get away from a combat you're in trouble in. So it's next to a body of water. That's no problem. The problem is if you haven't seen a body of water within a mile, then you have no destination, and then this doesn't work. So you go into a dungeon and, you didn't see any forms of water, and then you need to escape. This doesn't work. But, in the right circumstances, I still believe, I haven't seen it, but I still believe in the right circumstances this could be very helpful. I still think it's worth 2 stars. And Fathomless gets 8th position overall. Onwards to the Genie. So they get Limited Wish. You entreat your patron and grant a small wish. As an action, you can speak your desire to your genie's vessel, requesting the effect of 1 spell that is 6th level or lower and has a casting time of 1 action. The spell can be from any class's spell list, and you don't need to meet the requirements in that spell, including costly components. The spell simply takes effect as part of this action. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish 1d4 long rests. So this is a little bit like the first part of the Wish spell, except you're limited to level 6 and lower instead of levels 8 and lower, and you can only select spells with the casting time of an action, and that pretty much cuts out every spell that you were going to cast with Wish. So it's a lot less powerful than Wish. It's still really good, though. It's really, really good, even though it's only usable once every 1d4 long rests. And then we get the expanded spell list, level 17. Now, you're not getting this at level 14, technically. You're getting it at level 17, but I have to take into account the availability of Wish at some point. So this is the point to do it, at our last waypoint. I didn't actually create a whole lot of extra value for this based on getting access to Wish, for the reasons I mentioned at the beginning of the video. But I still think Limited Wish is the best feature that any Warlock subclass gets at level 14. So it's 5 stars. And that is going to jump up the Genie to 6th place. They're still in the bottom half, even with a 5-star feature. Which is a bit of a shock, but again, I have to keep in mind that their level 3, level 6, and level 10 feature all scored lower because of the updated rules in the 2024 Player's Handbook. And then we're on to the Hexblade. And they get Master of Hexes. Starting at 14th level, you can spread your Hexblade's curse from a slain creature to another creature. When the creature cursed by your Hexblade's curse dies, you can apply the curse to a different creature you can see within 30 feet of you, provided you aren't incapacitated. When you apply the curse in this way, you don't regain hit points from the death of the previously cursed creature. Now, my assumption is we're not actually increasing the duration of Hexblade's curse. We're just allowing us to switch targets within that duration. So it's not like we've made it more than a minute, but it is nice that you can go into a combat, drop an enemy, replace your Hexblade's curse onto somebody else, and attack them and still gain that benefit. That is still really nice. And Hexblade's curse remains extremely relevant for the Hexblade at high level. In fact, it's still their primary feature. So I gave this 3 stars. I think it is average. And that is going to give them 7th place overall. That's actually the 3rd last spot. But anyway, we'll move on to the Undead, which you can imagine is going to be in 5th spot. I know, huge spoiler, because the Undying isn't going to jump up to 5th spot. Anyway, we have Spirit Projection. This is a long one. I can't even fit it all on the screen at the same time. But basically, your spirit can become untethered from your physical form. This is a little bit like astral projection, right? You send out a projection of yourself, and then your actual body kind of goes into suspended animation while your astral form is hunting around. But as an action, you can project your spirit from your body, The body you leave behind is unconscious and in a state of suspended animation. Your spirit resembles your mortal form in almost every way, replicating your game statistics but not your possessions. Any damage or other effects that apply to your spirit or physical body affects the other. Your spirit can remain outside your body for up to 1 hour or until your concentration is broken, as if concentrating on a spell. When the projection ends, your spirit returns to your body or your body magically teleports to your spirit space, your choice. That's really kind of interesting. It's not the way you would expect it to work. While projecting your spirit, you gain the following benefits. Your spirit and body gain resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. Nice. When you cast a spell of the Conjuration or Necromancy school, the spell doesn't require verbal or somatic components or material components that lack a gold cost. Very nice. Of course, we don't want to cast any spell with a material component because we don't have possessions. You have a flying speed equal to your walking speed and can hover. Nice. You can move through creatures and objects as if they were difficult terrain, but you take 1d10 force damage if you end your turn inside a creature or an object. Gotta stop here. Because the ability to become incorporeal and move through things still exists in the new rules, but what doesn't exist is the ability to remain inside an object at the end of your turn. Here you can, and you take a d10 force damage, which isn't very much. It will make you make a concentration save, but there's a very good chance that if you've built your character carefully, by 14th level, you cannot fail that save. And a d10 force damage isn't that much. So what it means is that if you're in a combat or find yourself in a combat, you could, shoot somebody with your Eldritch Blast or whatever it is, sink into the floor, take your d10 damage, and then on your next turn, pop up, Eldritch Blast, back down. And it's broken. That's why they don't have this anymore, because it is exploitable, right? While you're using a form of dread, once during each of your turns, when you deal necrotic damage to a creature, you gain hit points equal to half the amount of the necrotic damage dealt, meaning that if we use our ability, our form of dread, and we're doing our Eldritch Blast and doing necrotic damage with it, the damage we took from ending in the floor, we get it back anyway. And once you use this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. It's 4 stars. I considered 5 stars. I really went back and forth on is this the 5-star feature, or is Limited Wish the 5-star feature? And I went back and forth. I decided that the Limited Wish was the 5-star feature, but I could totally understand if some of you want to give me shade in the comments and say this should have been the 5-star feature. I get it. It could have been. It was close. This is still enough for them to get 5th position overall. So they're still right in the middle, but they're actually just a little bit above average. And that's only because we have one terrible subclass that's bringing the bottom of the barrel ever lower. And look at this one. I'm just going to go ahead and put it right on screen. It's getting 1 star. This is our 14th level feature. When you reach 14th level, you partake some of the true secrets of the Undying. On your turn, you can use a bonus action to regain hit points equal to a d8 plus your Warlock level. It's not a huge amount, right? Like it's 14 plus a d8, probably talking 18 or 19 points. I'd expect a 2nd level Cure Wounds to heal about that amount. Additionally, if you put a severed body part of yours back in place when you use this feature, the part reattaches. How often does that happen in game, that you lose a body part? Once in a blue moon. I won't say never, because it does happen, but most campaigns it doesn't happen at all. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. So we get this healing that's about as good as a 2nd level spell once per short rest, and that's really about it. And it's self-only. 1 star. That's no 14th level feature. And here are our final results. The Undying got 5 stars, which is the same as the Sun Soul Monk. So nobody got lower than the Sun Soul Monk here, but it was tied. But we can see the huge jump just by going up 1 position. Fathomless at 10, which is actually not bad, right? It's a little below average, but average would be 12. And then Hexblade at 11. And remember, at early levels, Hexblade's above average. It's just if you carry it on all the way, it's a below average subclass for Warlocks, at least now. Genie, 13. That's actually above average. But it only gets them 6th spot because we have 3 13 star subclasses here because the Undead and the Celestial are also 13. Though none of them are officially tied at this level because they had different scores at previous levels. So I do consider the Celestial the best of the 3 at 14th level, assuming you've leveled your way up. But yeah, Celestial, Undead, and Genie still at level 14. I'd say they're quite close. Great Old One jumps up to 15, and notice that it is tied with Archfey and Fiend. So you have 3 15s, then you have 3 13s, an 11 and a 10, and then a 5. So there's only one subclass here I think is a bad subclass. That's Undying. I think the other ones are all close to average or above average. And yeah, Fiend, Archfey, and Great Old One, if you put in the levels and get to those high levels, I think they are very comparable. And though that's the Warlock, and like I mentioned previously, I will be doing another video and I am going to be adding additional stars to the Undead, Genie, Hexblade, Fathomless, and Undying based on what spells are available on their expanded spell list. If we were to put a house rule where they get those spells for free. What I'm not going to do is redo the whole thing. So I'm not going to re-rank Fiend, Archfey, Great Old One, and Celestial based on that house rule, because that would be incredible amount of work. So what it is going to mean is that we're going to have a greater than average amount for above average features. So if we look at these scores, we can see that in general, they're pretty close to the average. If you add them all together, it's going to end up above average on my next video, just to let you know. And at this point, what I want to do is say, if you have been watching to the end, thank you so much. If you enjoy this content, I do this full time, and I am only able to do this full time because I have a Patreon and patrons support me and pay me my income. And if you would be willing to support this content, please click the link to my Patreon in the video description and take a look at the various tiers. I want to thank my mage level tiers today. So thank you to Mr. Wonderful, Babrak, DMG, John D, Darren Williams, Descarpus9, El Conquista Dorito, Phoenix, Hatap, Jared Huberger, John Wayne, Joseph Robideau, Wu Carl Kong, McSkill, Michael Michelle, Moxie, Nemo, Paul Suzak, Phantasmagoria Prime, Phil Sokolov, Prometheo NTG, Big Chungus, Robert Riley, Shane and Todd Beyond, Simon Jester, Somnoriel, Earshine, The Fantastic Emporium, Tyler Thorstrom, Blue Wolf, Zukarab, and Wade. One take. Woo! All right, good way to end. So until next time, I am going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.